until he's out of contract next summer, of course, as well. So what are Arne Slot's thoughts on potentially adding 2 centre-halves to his squad? Only a week after he kind of talked down the need to add in that position. Let's just say he was less forthcoming about Mark Gahey than he was about Leone when I spoke to him earlier this morning.
He hasn't signed for us yet, so the moment when he signs for us, I can go into more detail. And the other one is, of course, the answer you always get from me.
Are you able to talk about that a little bit more broadly, though, and say what expectation you have of possibly getting hold of Mark Gahey?
No. No, because he's not our player. And unfortunately, he was the captain of the team where we lost against last Sunday. So, no, if you want to have any talks about him, you should go to Palace, to Glasner, and ask him his opinion about him.
He's very honest, isn't he, Arne? So I love the way he just shut you down there, Vinny, with just a straight, no, I'm not going to carry on with that, but with a smile on his face always. What about the mood in general then? Because, you know, Liverpool begin their defence live on Sky Sports tomorrow night against Bournemouth. Really exciting game. What's the mood like in the camp?
Yeah, he's always very polite, Arne Slot, and I think he gave away the mood in the camp as well. It's all pretty positive, despite that disappointment against Crystal Palace in the Community Shield as well. It's been obviously a summer where they've brought in new faces, but they've also lost a lot of regular starters from last season as well. And obviously, Arne Slot is looking to build on the success of last season now. But looking at the preparations throughout this summer, at various points they've been without the likes of Virgil van Dijk, just recovering from illness, of course. Alisson was missing for a couple of pre-season games due to personal reasons. McAllister has been getting his way back to full fitness. On top of that, of course, they've been looking to integrate the new players into the team. So those kind of complications, I suppose, don't necessarily help when you're trying to get a cohesiveness about the team and trying to gel things together. But Slot believes they will be 100% ready for the start of the season and 100% ready to start the defence of their Premier League title in what could potentially be an even bigger challenge than last season.
The reason why that is so difficult lays mainly in the fact that there are so many competitors that can also win the league over here. So to win it once is already very special, let alone if you can win it twice in 3, 4, 5 years, or as we did twice in 5 years, and City did even better than us in the last few years. So that's unbelievable if you're able to do this in this league. And probably this year it's going to be harder than every year before, because every team brings in new players, but our main competitors definitely did as well.
Just to emphasise how difficult it is to win back-to-back titles as well. Aside from Manchester City, the last team to do so was Manchester United back in 2008 and then in 2009. So Liverpool's attempts to make history gets underway in the Friday Night Football, and it is, of course, live on Sky Sports.
Oh, it is, and I cannot wait. Cheers, Vinny. OK, right, let's get into a bit of Liverpool chat then off the back of what Vinny said there. I guess, James, there's been a lot of talk over the last few days about Liverpool perhaps needing a bit more depth at centre-back. But if we just take a step back and have a look at what they've done in this window, are they still in great shape and have had the best transfer window of any of the Premier League sides?
You could argue that because of the amount of money they've spent, the quality of players they brought in and how early they acted as well. A lot of these deals were wrapped up so early that these players have had a full pre-season with Arne Slot. Look at what they've done at left-back. They've upgraded there in the form of Milos Kerkez. They've brought in one of the most exciting young attacking players in the world in the form of Florian Wirtz, and they have found a replacement for Trent Alexander-Arnold, although a player clearly with a very different profile. I don't think you can find many players like Trent out there. We wait to see how Jeremy Frimpong gets on. And they've also signed a number 9 who they didn't really have last season because Darwin wasn't really in favour. I don't think Arne Slot really was able to get the very best of him. I don't think he was the profile striker that Slot wanted. They've got that now in the form of Hugo Ekitike, and they could maybe get another striker. There's still a bit of time left of this transfer window. But as Arne Slot has alluded to in the media already over the course of pre-season, they've lost a number of players and they've lost a huge amount of experience as well. When you look at the amount of football that Luis Diaz played last season, he played 50 times in all competitions for Liverpool. Trent and Nunez played more than 40 times across all competitions. So the starting 11 is going to look very different tomorrow night from the one that finished the Premier League season in May. So there may be a period of adaptation. And I think that's why Arne Slot is giving off quite a cautious tone, I think, in his briefings to the media so far, because there is work to do. When you look at the defence as well, I do think they're not quite at the level that he'd have hoped heading into the start of this season.
It does sound like they might not be done there as well, though, as you mentioned there, possibility of a striker coming in. I think we all know who that is. And possibly even another defender. So what would make Liverpool stronger, do you think? If they could only bring one in, Gueye or Isak?
I think when you can sign a player like Alexander Isak, it's very hard to argue that they need to sign a defender instead. But defensively, Liverpool do look a little bit uncertain. I was at the Community Shield on Sunday and they didn't quite look right at the back. And you can understand why. They've changed half of their back line because they've got 2 new fullbacks now and they've got Virgil van Dijk, Ibrahim Konate. But when you look at the bench they had at the weekend, there were no fit available centre-backs to step in. I know Slot has spoken about the likes of Endo and Andy Robertson playing at centre-back, but you look at the situation there with Jurgen Quansah departing in the summer, with Joe Gomez never seemingly being able to get fully fit, that there is really going to be a problem there if Konate, who's out of contract next summer, gets injured, or Virgil van Dijk gets injured. So I do think they'll be better equipped for the start of this Premier League season if they sign a central defender rather than a forward, because Liverpool are pretty well equipped if Hugo Ekitike got injured, say, because yes, there's no other natural number 9s, but the likes of Cody Gakpo could play centrally. They could find a way of working things without a central striker, though without a centre-back, I don't think you want to be going into some of the big games at the start of this season. They take on Newcastle in the second game week. They take on Arsenal in the third week of the season if you've lost Konate or Van Dijk. Hopefully that won't be the case, but you can understand why defensively there are concerns. They've kept 1 clean sheet in pre-season so far, and Arne Slot admitted on Sunday after the match that there is work to be done. And I spoke to Virgil van Dijk on Sunday, and I think there's a real feeling that there is plenty of work to be done. It's not a foregone conclusion that Liverpool will steal the march and get this second Premier League title in a row. I do think internally they know there's plenty of work to be done, and that could involve bringing in a centre-back as well as a striker.
Yeah, it's not an easy start either, is it? A reminder, the Friday night football to kick us off is Liverpool against Bournemouth. And let's get to Bournemouth, where it's been a summer of change. Richard Newman joins us live from the club's training ground now. Hello there, Richard. Let's start off with what potentially could happen over the next couple of weeks at Bournemouth, because Anthony Iraola's got pretty much a new backline to work with. But do we think Bournemouth are not done there in terms of looking to bring in a few more players?
Yeah, that's the big question. I guess we'll be asking Andone Iraola that in the next hour or two. I guess if you're a Bournemouth fan taking an optimistic point of view, you could say there's been plenty of time to plan for this, and those plans may still be playing out because Dean Huyson and Milos Kerkez left early in the transfer window, and then Ilias Zabanye's moved to Paris Saint-Germain. Although it's only just been completed, that is a rumour that's been around for quite some time. It's a saga that's only just been resolved, and it's not just the back line that has been changed. It's the whole defensive unit. I mean, Kepa was in goal last season on loan from Chelsea. Now he's at Arsenal. Bournemouth have had to go back to Chelsea and they signed Georgi Petrovic as their new number 1. So plenty of change. And if you look at who's come in, Adrien Truffert from Rennes early in the season, he's basically a direct replacement for Kerkez. He's been bedded in for a little bit of a while now. Then this week, Bafodé Diakité coming in from Lille, another addition from Ligue 1 in France. And the question there is whether you throw him straight into the starting lineup against the Premier League champions Liverpool on Sky Sports in your first game. In pre-season, Zabanye was quite heavily involved, but the mainstay at centre-back was Marcos Senesi, and he was either partnering Zabanye or James Hill, who was at the back against Real Sociedad in their final friendly at the weekend. So maybe more needed. And then on top of that, there's lots of speculation about Dango Ouattara, and Brentford apparently after him. So we'll try and get an update on that later on as well. But the major positives for Bournemouth is that Andone Iraola has stayed here. He's done a terrific job at this club since coming in. He's about to start his 3rd straight season. Not many months ago now that we were talking about him potentially being a contender to take over at Tottenham Hotspur. And then on top of that, Antoine Semenyo, who was heavily linked with other clubs too, signing a new contract. And that just sends a great message, doesn't it, to prospective signings when they're trying to attract players here to this club. It's a terrific new training facility behind me. That's only been open for a matter winter months. There are big plans for the stadium as well. Iraola always has a strategy in place, and the way that they do their transfers here as well is very much admired. So maybe there will be activity in the final few weeks of the window, and we'll try and get an update from Andoni Iraola about that in the next hour or so.
Great stuff. Look forward to it. Cheers, Richard. Yeah, and Richard underlined it there, didn't he, James? Because they've replaced the goalkeeper, so Petrovic has come in for Kepa. They've brought in two defenders, Adrien Truffert, direct replacement for Kerkez, Bafode Diakite, who's a very well thought of centre-back. But they lost three big defenders, didn't they, with the two centre-backs and the left-back? So do they still need to do some business in the defence?
Yeah, you're right, doing the math. They're one short on where they were defensively last season. As Richard alluded to there, Marcus Senesi missed a large portion of last season with an injury, so he becomes an option. But it's our understanding they do want to sign another centre-back in this window. Diakite has come in to replace Zabani, but they've not really replaced Dean Howson yet. They haven't done that yet, so they will be looking to sign a centre-back before the end of this transfer window. It would be fascinating to hear what Andoni Iraola has to say later today. At the same time, they're looking to sign a winger too. Andoni Iraola is very keen on adding in that area of the pitch because there is the feeling that Dango Ouattara will depart for Brentford if Bournemouth can find a replacement and line him up, because Brentford want to replace Brian Mbeumo, Dango wants to move elsewhere, but Bournemouth needs to find a replacement there. Aman Adli from Bayer Leverkusen is a player they've looked at, but they've kept their manager. It's been brilliant since the new owners came in at the end of 2022. Look at that brand new training ground they've got there. Bournemouth fans aren't too concerned, albeit it has been a real summer of upheaval.
Yeah. OK, right, we've got a bit of news for you from Nottingham Forest this lunchtime. Forest are in talks with Rennes over a deal for the striker Arnaud Calemwendo. The 23-year-old France international is among the most sought-after forwards in the final weeks of the window. The likes of RB Leipzig, Villarreal have also been keen to sign him. Calemwendo also tracked as a striker by some other Premier League clubs as well, including Brentford. Nottingham Forest, though, are in talks with Rennes over a deal for him. Right, still to come. Former England and Arsenal keeper David Seaman tells us which Premier League team should sign Gianluigi Donnarumma. You won't want to miss it. Stay with us. Welcome back to Transfer Talk. Let's talk about Manchester United now then. We'll start, James, I think, with Rasmus Højlund, because he trained yesterday, but he's been told by Manchester United that he can leave and go and play elsewhere. How is this likely to play out?
Well, AC Milan have held positive talks with United around the signing of Højlund. As yet, there's no agreement between the clubs. Højlund himself has still yet to decide if AC Milan is the right move for him or any move whatsoever is the right thing for him to do, because he's spoken frequently over the course of pre-season about wanting to fight for his place at Manchester United. We understand Milan are speaking to Højlund's representatives to find out if he'll be open to joining Manchester United before proceeding with trying to thrash out a deal with United. Milan would prefer a loan with an option to buy. United would want to do a permanent deal, or at least have a permanent element attached to a loan deal. We understand they consider offers of around £40 million. For what it's worth, what I think United would have loved to do if they weren't in a financial situation where they need to recoup money in terms of sales, is give him the opportunity to go out on loan somewhere this season, because there is a real player there. We've not quite seen it in terms of goals, but there have been glimpses that this is a striker that could go on to be a really, really top striker in Europe. There's a reason why United signed him 2 years ago for around £70 million, because they've seen the potential there. That potential is still there, and actually he's excelled in European competitions, did really well in the Champions League the season before last. You just think if he has a year playing at a club like AC Milan and then comes back to United, United readdress the situation. If United are in Europe next season, maybe they will need two strikers in the form of Šeško and Rasmus Højlund. I think there would be regrets if he goes permanently, because I do think he will go on and be a superstar somewhere else. I know that's a bold claim based on what he's done at the 2 years at United, but I do think there's a player there. There's not many number nines, as we've learnt in this transfer window. That is why it costs so much to sign proven number nines. I do think he needs a year of football where he is the number 9, which he won't be given this season at United. But I do think because of the situation United are in, having spent more money than they probably thought they would heading into this transfer window, there does need to be one or two big sales just so they can stay within the rules when it comes to profit and sustainability. Because, yes, the deadline is the 30th of June next summer to fit within the rules, but clearly this is the best window for sales, because you don't want to be leaving it until January, and you do not want to be leaving it until the start of next transfer window to get your business done before the 30th of June, when every club knows that you need to make sales to fit within the rules.
Yeah, and well, that's the issue for Manchester United. It's not just Højlund, is it? There's a number of players, including, of course, Jadon Sancho, who they're still trying to find a home for. It doesn't seem like he's got a future at Manchester United, but what are his options at the moment?
It looks like there's a few options on the table, nothing concrete as of yet as things stand. It'd be nice when we don't have to talk about Jadon Sancho's future anymore, won't it? Because it feels like it's been a saga that's dragged on ever since he's been at Manchester United. But Besiktas are a club that have shown interest in signing him. Their club president is quoted as saying they'll do their best to sign him if Sancho wants to join. And once he emerged as a potential target, Besiktas fans, they've been voting with their thumbs on social media, because they've been leaving more than 5 million comments on his latest Instagram post demanding Jadon Sancho come to Besiktas, come and join us. Borussia Dortmund remain interested, no agreement there. There has been reports in the Times that Roma have submitted a bid to sign Sancho on loan. We know there has been interest from clubs in Italy and Saudi Arabia. United, as they want to do with Rasmus Højlund, would prefer a permanent deal. And it's more pressing with Jadon Sancho because his contract runs out next summer. There is the option of extending that by a further 12 months. The danger with that being, do you want to commit yourself to being in this situation again next summer, paying those wages for another season? So I don't think the possibility of a loan can be ruled out. But as far as United are concerned, he's not going to be playing for them this season. I know Ruben Amorim said that players will be reintegrated if their market value is not met. I don't think that's going to be the case with Jadon Sancho. I think they're hoping that somebody gets hold of Jadon Sancho this summer and they can end what has been a fairly unsavoury chapter. We started in 2021 with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer as manager. He's now the manager of Besiktas, they being one of the clubs interested in signing him.
Yeah, interesting little plot twist that. Man United have spent over £200 million pretty much all on attacking players, haven't they? So you look at their squad and you think there's probably still a few more holes that they could fill. Do you think that midfield is likely to be the next top priority?
It looks like that would be the next thing on the list for United. Christian Eriksen departed in the summer at the end of his contract, so there's a space in the squad for him. Clearly, Casemiro, how much has he got left in the tank? He actually showed a bit of a renaissance at the back end of last season when it did look like potentially his time at the very top level would come to an end, but he did well to put himself back into contention. For United, the priority is sales, but if they can get themselves in a situation where they know they're going to make the sales, then if a market opportunity presents itself to sign a player like Carlos Baleba, then they will look to act upon that. I do think this is a really, really difficult deal for United to do. I don't think at this moment in time it's going to be possible for United to do that. A, because they are struggling right now to get the money they need to be compliant and ensure they're well set to go after another player, because they've still got the likes of Alejandro Garnacho, Jadon Sancho, Anthony still there, Tyrell Malacia too, and Rasmus Højlund. They need to have sales before they can really attack a real transfer like Carlos Baleba. And Brighton, we know how hard it's going to be to deal with Brighton, because they sold Moises Caicedo for £115 million. I'm not saying that's what they asked for Carlos Baleba, but if you ask Brighton fans, they'll say Baleba is maybe slightly further ahead in his development than Caicedo was when he's departed for Chelsea. So you can see the sort of figures that Brighton will want. And at this moment in time, United surely aren't in a situation where they can be that aggressive with the bidding for Carlos Baleba. I think they're aware there's a number of issues with the United squad. Centre midfield, goalkeeper, but in one transfer window, you can't completely revolutionise the squad, because, yes, you can buy players, getting rid of players is very difficult as well. So they won't be able to do it all this summer, but if they can get some money with sales, and they can do pretty much most of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, OK, let's get to another big story that's just kind of popped up from nowhere in the last few days, and that is Gianluigi Donnarumma, who was a key part of the Paris Saint-Germain club finally getting their hands on a Champions League trophy this year. But could Italy's number one be on his way to the Premier League this summer? Former England goalkeeper David Seaman is a big fan of Donnarumma, who effectively has been told he has no future at PSG. And Seaman has highlighted two clubs who he feels would really benefit from getting his signature.
He's proven how good and how important he was, especially last season when you saw some of the saves that he made even against Arsenal in the Champions League. You know, he was the reason that they got through, and then you go to the final and he has a fantastic game there, you know. So, yeah, I would imagine that Manchester United, maybe Chelsea, would be really looking hard at that, because you're adding quality to your team. He's shown what he can do, and he's fantastic at it. You know, you're getting a goalkeeper that's proven quality at the highest level as well. You know, because we also saw how he broke England's hearts in the Euros as well.
So David there name-checking Manchester United and Chelsea. At the moment, though, it's Manchester City who've been linked most with Donnarumma, although City say that they want Ederson to stay and remain their number one. But why wouldn't a few other Premier League teams right now be heavily linked with Donnarumma? He's a Champions League winning goalkeeper.
He is, and you look at a lot of the top six clubs in the Premier League, or so-called big six clubs, and you look at the goalkeepers they have there right now, and you would think that Donnarumma would be a significant upgrade on what they have right now. But just because you could get Donnarumma for a cut price fee because he's got 1 year left in his contract, there are still very sizable wages to be considered here, because he signed for PSG as a free agent after his contract ran out at AC Milan. So the salary he is on right now is very, very significant. And you look at teams that could do with an upgrade. David Seaman spoke about Chelsea and Manchester United. Well, let's look at Chelsea. Their focus in terms of their transfer strategy, yes, they'll look for market opportunities, but it's tending to focus on younger players who they'll sign on a low base salary over a long period of time. And it's heavily incentivised. If you play, then you'll get paid much more money. If you're not playing, then you'll be on that base salary. Could they get Donnarumma to fit within that wage structure? I'm not so sure. They did try to sign Mike Maignan from AC Milan earlier on this summer because they felt there was a good market opportunity there. He was 29, turns 30 this summer, but he wouldn't have been on the wages which you'd expect Donnarumma would be asking for. As for Manchester United, we do know that they want to upgrade in the goalkeeper department. There's reports that they tried to sign Emi Martinez on loan from Aston Villa. Aston Villa very swiftly turned that down. But for United, they simply can't afford, you'd think right now, to be paying sizable wages. They've been stung in the past when they've done that, with the likes of Anthony, Jadon Sancho, we've just spoken about as well. But you would think all clubs right now in the Premier League would be looking at this situation with one eye, thinking, can we make the numbers work? Because he will make a huge difference to whichever club he joined, based on what he did in particular in the Champions League last season.
But that's the thing, though, isn't it? I mean, you might have to pay a lot of wages, but because PSG have let it be known that he's surplus to requirements, surely a lot of clubs are looking at that and saying, well, we can get him for a real cut price fee because we know he wants to go. We know that PSG don't want him.
And for PSG, they do not want to be in a situation like they were last time with Kylian Mbappe, where you invest so much money in the player only to see them leave for absolutely nothing. And he's on such significant wages there, it's going to cost them millions, more than £10 million his wages up until the end of May, June, when his contract expires. And it looks like he's going to be training on his own. He's not even going to be on the bench. That's a lot of money to spend on a player not doing anything whatsoever for you. In France, they call it the loft. He'll be training in the loft with the bomb squad. There's a few players there right now as well. PSG don't want to let him go for free. So, yes, there would be a cut price option there, you'd think, and clubs will be looking at what they can do in the final days of the transfer window, because as the days tick down, that fee that PSG will want, it'll be there right now, but a few days' time it'll be right down the bottom there. But there is the wages to consider, but you can understand why every club is looking at this right now thinking, if we can get him in, then this could change our season from a good one into a really, really good one.
Yeah, fascinating to see where he ends up. And of course, we'll let you know as soon as we know. We've got loads more to come. We're going to get back to one of the sagas of the window so far. Will Johan Wissa get his move away from Brentford? Stay with us. is your transfer update. Liverpool have reached an agreement with the Italian club Parma for the signing of this man, Giovanni Leone. The fee is £26 million plus add-ons. He'll have a medical today. Liverpool also remain in talks for the Crystal Palace defender Mark Guéhi and are favourites to sign the England international. The question is whether they can negotiate a fee now or wait to sign him as a free agent next summer. Manchester City want Ederson to stay at the club and remain their #1 goalkeeper. Newcastle are in talks over a move for the Aston Villa midfielder Jacob Ramsey. Yoann Wissa trained away from the Brentford first team squad yesterday as he seeks a move away. Tottenham Hotspur remain keen on Crystal Palace's Eberechi Eze. Free agent striker Dominic Calvert-Lewin has agreed a deal in principle to join Leeds United. Atalanta have made a £34.5 million offer for Fulham's Rodrigo Muniz. Besiktas are the latest club to have shown interest in Manchester United forward Jadon Sancho. Aston Villa are interested in signing PSG's Marco Asensio. He, of course, spent last season on loan at Villa Park. And big news in the Championship. Wrexham have agreed a club record £10 million deal to sign Ipswich Town forward Nathan Broadhead. Don't forget, you can keep across all the latest information as it happens on our dedicated Transfer Centre blog. To get there, you just scan that QR code, which is on your screen right now. Right, let us talk once again, James, about Yoann Wissa, because he trained away from the Brentford first team squad yesterday. So far, that's not been confirmed by Brentford, but it would make sense if he doesn't want to play for the club again, given that the preparations to face Nottingham Forest on Sunday are now obviously intensifying. Is this something that Brentford really have to get sorted quickly? Otherwise, it could potentially derail the start to their season.
It feels like it's been a real summer of upheaval. They've been such a well-run club over the course of the last few years. Thomas Frank did an incredible job over the 7.5 years he was at Brentford. But there is a feeling going into this season that Brentford could be under real pressure because they replaced Thomas Frank with a rookie manager. They've lost Brian Mbeumo, who scored 20 goals for them last season. The other guy that scored 19 goals for them last season is now training on his own, we understand. So they're not in a great place right now. They need to find a replacement for Yoann Wissa. And from Wissa's perspective, I don't think he's handled the situation as well as he could have done. But you can understand why his head has been turned by a move to Newcastle to play in the Champions League. A player who probably for the last few years never thought he'd get to a stage where he'd play Champions League football. Yes, he had a huge amount of belief in himself, but what he did last season in the Premier League was remarkable. 19 Premier League goals. He doesn't take penalties either. It's staggering. You can understand why there was interest from Nottingham Forest, why there was interest from Newcastle as well. But it's something they need to resolve because going into the start of this season, they're missing Mbeumo and Wissa, who scored 39 goals for them last season. They scored 66 in total. A huge chunk of their goals have been taken away. The one silver lining is they signed Igor Thiago last summer. Because of injury, he only started one Premier League game. I know Brentford are very excited about him playing a real role this season.
He's fit now.
He's fit now. He's going to be the leading striker this season for Brentford as things stand. But they need to find a replacement for Wissa because right now they're in a situation where there is a leadership void. Yes, they replaced Christian Norgard with Jordan Henderson, but they're in a situation where they've got a rookie manager going into a season where they've been so brilliant over the course of the years they've been in the Premier League. But this is the one season where you think, Brentford, have you got enough to stay and survive in the Premier League? And right now you can understand why it feels like they're going to be in a difficult spot.
I mean, they have spent some money, haven't they? But not all the money that they got, not just for Mbeumo, but for Norgard as well and for Mark Flecken. So they should have a little bit in the bank to spend should they want to. Do you expect Brentford to be one of the busier clubs in the next couple of weeks?
I think so. That they have built a really impressive squad over the course of the last few years. The likes of Kevin Schade was a revelation last season. Many forget about the goals that he scored for Brentford. He got more than 10 in the Premier League last season. He'll have a big role to play. Fabio Carvalho, they spent a huge amount of money signing him from Liverpool. Didn't quite see the best of him last season because he didn't get the opportunities. It's a big season for Fabio Carvalho. They've upgraded in the goalkeeper department. You could argue Mark Flecken was brilliant for 2 years for Brentford. But Kelleher is going to be one of the best goalkeepers in the Premier League this season. You'd think, though he may have quite a bit of work to do. Defensively, they're pretty much where they were last season. There's a number of options they have defensively. In midfield, you'd think there maybe needs to be a little bit of surgery, though Jordan Henderson has replaced Norgard, as I mentioned, from a leadership perspective. But clearly, Brian Mbeumo is gone, and they need somebody who can offer something like he did. If they can offer half what Brian Mbeumo did last season, then they'll probably be all right this season. They want to sign Dango Ouattara from Bournemouth, but at the same time, we're talking about Johan Wissa only departing Brentford. If they can sign a replacement striker, well, Bournemouth will only let Dango Ouattara go if they can find a replacement for Dango Ouattara. So you could see a lot of moves move very quickly. If Bournemouth can find a replacement for Ouattara, I do expect this deal to go through, because he's told Bournemouth he wants to explore moves elsewhere. He's not quite got the opportunities he wanted at Bournemouth. He will be a very key part of Brentford's plans if he moves there. So, there's plenty of days left this transfer window. There's a few clubs waiting for something to happen, and that could be a bit of a chain reaction. We'll see a lot of activity.
Maybe you don't bump into Mark Flecken anytime soon. Just call Kelleher an upgrade on him. You know?
And Mark Flecken's got off to Bayer Leverkusen as well, working with Erik ten Hag. So clearly he's a very good goalkeeper. But I think you look at what Kelleher's done in a Liverpool shirt, and you can understand why Brentford fans are pretty excited.
Both good goalkeepers.
Very good goalkeepers.
Both very good goalkeepers. Right, Newcastle obviously are still keen on Wissa. They're also still keen on Jacob Ramsey from Aston Villa. Now, is his versatility a big reason why Newcastle might want him? Because he doesn't just play in midfield.
No, he can play in central midfield. He can play more on the left-hand side. I think that's where he favours playing. Of course, Newcastle have a number of options there, the likes of Anthony Gordon and Harvey Barnes as well. But having that versatility there when you've got the option of playing in the Champions League this season, where you will need a slightly bigger squad. And it's been a difficult summer, hasn't it, for Newcastle, to put it politely. It's been challenging getting players to come. I don't think it's a case of players not wanting to join Newcastle. It's just a situation where players have got the option of Chelsea or Newcastle, which João Pedro had, and Brian Mbeumo had the option of Manchester United or Newcastle. Newcastle have been brilliant over the course of the last few years, getting themselves into a situation where they are competing for the best players in the world. And they see Jacob Ramsey as somebody who they've looked at for a long period of time and think they can do a deal this window because of the situation that Aston Villa are in, where they probably will need to make a sale. They don't want to let John McGinn go. They don't want to let Ollie Watkins go. They don't want to let Jacob Ramsey go, but he would represent pure profit. And because of the need to fit within PSR rules and UEFA's rules as well, because Aston Villa have to play ball when it comes to UEFA's rules, Jacob Ramsey feels like one they may have to let go because they've signed Evan Gosson, so there will need to be a major sale. So Newcastle let go of Sean Longstaff. They didn't want to let him go. It took Leeds, I think, 4 bids, and they finally got him. So they do need a bit of strength and depth when it comes to midfield options. And Jacob Ramsey probably needs to be starting games at this point in his career because he's not quite had those opportunities over the last season or two at Villa.
Yeah, we'll probably just touch on Aston Villa again in the next part if we have time, just talk about their general PSR issues and who might be coming in. But as far as Newcastle are concerned, is it quite hard for Newcastle to know how to act in the market at the moment, because they don't have a huge chunk of cash for Alexander Isak at the moment, but they might. So how do they play it?
It's really difficult, in particular from a striker perspective, because they went in for Hugo Ekitike as somebody to play alongside Alexander Isak, and he went to Liverpool, and then they looked at Benjamin Šeško, and he went to Manchester United. So they're looking at the list of potential replacements for Alexander Isak, and already they've scrapped the first 2 options on that list. So there's not many players that are there in the market right now that they know and have full confidence in that they can replace Alexander Isak with, and they'll get a same number of goals, because Alexander Isak over the course of the last 2 seasons in the Premier League has scored more than 20 goals in both of those last 2 seasons. And also clubs know that Newcastle have money to spend as well, because yes, they've signed Malik Chow, but they went in for the likes of James Trafford, they went in for the likes of João Pedro and Brian Mbeumo. Other clubs know, despite what Eddie Howe has said about the constraints which Newcastle are dealing with, which they are, but there's money to spend, and that makes things difficult from a negotiating point of view. I think the fact that this Alexander Isak situation is dragging on is really bad news for Newcastle heading into this new season, because there was so much optimism at the end of last season, having got into the Champions League, and now they are in a situation at the start of this new season where probably at the weekend Anthony Gordon will have to play as a false 9, or William Asula will play as the striker, who's got 1 Premier League goal. They've got a huge amount of excitement and enthusiasm about William Asula's career as a Newcastle striker, but right now he's not in a position where you'd think he can lead the line for Newcastle. Callum Wilson departed at the end of the last season, so already they're looking for a striker. Now they need 2 strikers. They can't get Johan Wissa yet, because Johan Wissa they can't find a replacement at Brentford. So for Newcastle, you feel for them because they have done everything they can. They are missing a sporting director right now. It's not a brilliant situation in terms of where the club is to attack the transfer window. It's not been a great start to this summer for Eddie Howe, but you never know what happens when the football gets underway. There's still quality in that squad. And aside from the Alexander Isak situation, that squad is looking good. But of course, Isak is the main man. And without him there, it's a very different proposition.
Yeah, absolutely is. Right, I told you that we would talk about Aston Villa in a bit more detail, and we will. Could Marco Asensio return to Villa this summer? Plus, Leeds are trying to bolster their attacking options ahead of the new season. We'll talk about those two clubs and a bit more next. With their business, but could there be one more signing to top off their recruitment before the deadline?
The summer's been great for Arsenal, and I'm sure Arsenal fans will agree with that. When you look at the signings we've made as well, they're quality additions to the squad and to the team. People were crying out last season about getting a striker. Now we've got a really good one. So it's about being consistent, and that's what we have been over the last few seasons. Okay, people sometimes call that a negative, as in we've only the second 3 times. but it's consistency that we're after, and now we've added to that by all the signings that we've made this summer. So I'm really excited. I think the only other one that's out there may be Eze, and that will add, especially to Martinelli's side, that left-hand side. But we'll wait and see. I think Arsenal fans are already happy with what's happened.
I suppose, James, it's quite easy to look at Liverpool spending and say, oh, well, Arsenal could do with an Eze or a Rodrigo on the left to give them another option. But on the face of it, have Arsenal plugged a lot of the gaps that needed plugging this summer?
They have. It's been an unprecedented summer for the club. The first summer for Andrea Berta as sporting director, and the majority, if not all of their business, done before the end of that pre-season tour with 6 summer signings. They're in a great position to go one better this season. The last 3 seasons they finished runners-up in the Premier League. I know there's a feeling that if they can sign one more attacking midfielder, maybe Iber Eze, then it would be the perfect window. But clearly from an Arsenal perspective, having spent so much money solving a number of areas that needed addressing for a long period of time, namely signing a striker in the form of Victor Gyökeres. And I think over the course of the last 2 or 3 years, they've been desperate to sign a player who can maybe not compete with Bukayo Saka, but can give him a breather. Somebody who means that Saka doesn't have to play 90 minutes every single game in every single competition. And I think the signing of Noni Madueke has maybe gone under the radar. Yes, it's a significant amount of money, around £50 million, but it does mean that when there's injuries or when they want to rotate, the quality of player there now is really there for Arsenal to compete in every single competition. I think you're right. Liverpool have probably stolen all the transfer window headlines with the business they've done. Arsenal have just been working away in the background, getting some of these deals done. Martin Zubimendi will make a big difference in midfield. You'd say a fairly significant upgrade on what they had there last season. Every area of the pitch now they have quality. When there's an injury to William Saliba or Gabriel, there are options there right now. Christian Mosquera could be a really good option to come in when Saliba's out. I think he's been signed as the man to come in if Saliba gets injured. They've got options in every single area of the pitch now. But now it's boring for Arsenal fans. The focus is on sales because it is now a fairly bloated squad. So the likes of Alexander Zinchenko, Fabio Vieira, Albert Sambi Lokonga, who's still there. Yeah. They need to find an exit strategy for the likes of those players. Kivior potentially. Reece Nelson obviously is a player that Fulham had interest in as well. So if they can get those deals done or have an idea that they can get these deals done, then maybe they can go after a player like Eze. But either way, I think they're in the best position they've been in heading into a new season. And Mikel Arteta says it's time to win things now. Yeah.
All right, let's get to Villa then, because they're interested in PSG's Marco Asensio, who, of course, was on loan at Villa Park last season. We understand, though, that no talks have taken place yet between the clubs, contrary to reports elsewhere. He was on loan with them last season, so why wouldn't Aston Villa have made a permanent deal then at the end of the season?
Well, I think from a profit and sustainability perspective, Aston Villa were a club that needed to be very careful ahead of the 30th of June deadline. So I don't think they wanted to commit to anything at that moment in time. They stayed complicit when it came to PSR rules. But this summer, they are also dealing with UEFA rules as well. They were fined in July for breaching UEFA's rules when it comes to earning rules and squad cost control. So they need to be very careful this summer. I know Aston Villa fans are very frustrated because of the restrictions of the financial rules they're being faced with, because it feels like they can't get up to the level of clubs like Arsenal and Manchester City because of the fact is they're having to do player trading, but they can't spend the amount of money, even though the money is there to be spent. So they did sign Evan Gassond last week for around £23.5 million. When it comes to Asensio, I think the deal they could have done in May, June is very different from the deal they can probably look at doing now in the final few days of this transfer window, because Asensio is in the last year of his contract, and we know Paris Saint-Germain will want to try and take some money from him if they can.
OK, let's squeeze Leeds in as well before we finish, because free agent Dominic Calvert-Lewin has agreed a deal in principle to join Leeds. He's free, James. He's a proven Premier League striker. Could this be a really good fit for both player and the club?
Well, depending on the contract terms he's got, because, of course, Dominic Calvert-Lewin is a brilliant player when he's at his very best. We saw that he was number 2 to Harry Kane at the Euros in 2021, but he's had those injury problems which have hampered his career over the course of the last few years. It's funny, as Sheffield United man going to Leeds United, but Daniel Farke has demanded attacking signings in this window. He doesn't feel like they're there. He thinks they're still a little bit short right now. They've not replaced Mana Solomon, so they want to sign attacking players, which means they can compete. And Daniel Farke knows what they need to do. His record in the Premier League as a manager has not been impressive at Norwich. He knows what needs to be done. They can do it. Then it gives themselves a great chance of staying in the Premier League. For Calvert-Lewin, it could represent a brilliant opportunity to get his career back on track as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of neutrals want to see him fit and just to see what he can do with it with another club. James, it's been a pleasure, mate. Thank you very much for today. Right, Good Morning Transfers returns tomorrow at 9 in the morning. James will be back and he'll be joined by the European football expert Andy Brassel. Make sure you tune in for that. We'll always get some really good lines from Andy. Transfer Talk also returns tomorrow at midday. But we're not done for today, though, because, of course, we've got a comprehensive roundup of all of the transfer stories with the Transfer Show. That's at 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. Thanks for watching. Stay with us, though, for all the latest news, including Arne Slot's first presser of the season.